Hello, this is Alex Burkett, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. This episode is a part of our Kitchen Side series where we pull back the curtain and show you the behind-the-scenes conversations, debates, strategies, and brainstorming sessions that we have at our agency. In this conversation, we cover the topic of speed. You'll be hard-pressed to find an ambitious person or company or marketing leader who doesn't want to move faster, whether it's the pressure of investor expectations or an intrinsic internal itch to build something meaningful. Patience often feels like an overrated virtue, and I relate to that. There's often a tension, however, between speed and focus or effectiveness, at least in practice, where, paradoxically perhaps, the desire for speed can often cause chaotic urgency, stress, a dilution of focus, whiplash through constant change and pivots. We're not really moving in one direction and not making progress, debt, technical or otherwise, all of which can actually result in a slowdown of progress and results. So in this conversation, we talk about ideas we've learned over the years, models, tactics, frameworks, processes to speed up processes and throughput and velocity while moving calmly even in the direction of your growth goals. So without further ado, here is the Long Game Podcast. So I before we recorded, I just queued it up. So I got to queue it up again. Talking about speed. The idea being that, all right, so everybody wants to go fast, right? Like if you're an ambitious person in any endeavor, in any area of your life, you're like, okay, I have this goal. I want to get to that goal. I want to go faster. I just got back into jiu-jitsu. I'm like, all right, like there's a blue belt, there's a purple belt, there's eventually a black belt. How fast can I get to the purple belt? And like, how do I take steps to get me there in 8 months instead of 8 years, right? Like that's a question you're going to ask in many areas of your life. With startup growth, that's kind of the area that I came from, is like early stage startups. The common refrain throughout like tons and tons of thought leaders like Paul Graham and Sam Altman and First Round Review and NFX, like you can literally look up speed as the advantage for startups or something like that on Google, and everybody's given this advice. It's the only advantage that a startup has, effectively. And the associated kind of dimensions that come with speed, like creativity and fast iteration, et cetera. But speed being the macro value. And then typically you'll see the opposite, which is like enterprises and incumbents have all the resources, all the talent, all the brand, all the Matthew effect and cumulative advantage. Their Achilles heel is they're slow, right? So we agree, I think premise level is that, do we agree with this, that speed is good generally?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The nuance and like why it's worthy of discussion is I think when people take this idea of speed, sometimes they take it to surface level and they start thrashing or, you know, like they'll, for example, like David and I think in working in growth dealt with this a lot. People will look at data too regularly and they won't understand sort of noise versus signal or anomalies versus trends. And you'll see like a drop in, let's say, well, Ali, you know this too, like an SEO ranking, for instance. If you're in position number 1 for a keyword, tomorrow you might be in position number 5 for that keyword. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be in position number 5 like next week. It's like there's fluctuations in data patterns, right? And in-house, when I was working growth roles, sometimes an executive would see a sudden drop or a sudden change. And you would have to basically take everything you were doing, all of your prioritized roadmap and effort and research and like the plan that you had to get to this endpoint. And you'd have to drop that for a day. And you'd have to be like, all right, I'm going to dig into this data and figure out what happened. And then surely every time you'd come back and be like, yep, just noise.
Yeah, but that's after sitting down and like thinking of all the potential things that could have gone wrong. And who knows how long that took, and like researching the forums and seeing if anyone else talked about this stuff, or like if anyone else is seeing it and talking to other team members.
Or my favorite, it was an artifact of poor data collection. Like it was like effectively just a bug. Like that happened so many times to me too.
Like, oh yeah, someone launched this campaign, this paid campaign, and forgot to set up the UTM parameters correctly.
Exactly. Or there's like bot traffic or something like that. Like that's happened to me so many times too. The reason this came up for me recently, it's something I think about a lot. I like moving fast, but the industry now with AI search and even SEO, like algo updates and kind of constant thrashing there's kind of this reactionary movement happening where we're taking sort of aggregate data patterns, often supplied by third-party vendors that, they're AI search platforms, and they analyze sort of in aggregate, like what citation sources influence outputs, what conversion rates and referral traffic patterns look like. I'm not finger pointing. I think this is interesting research. But what happens is marketing leaders will look at that because there's a lot of uncertainty and they're looking for some signal as to what they should do, which is obviously like a reasonable thing to do. And then they'll kind of move in the direction of whatever these aggregate data trends say. So week one, it might be like, all right, Reddit is like the number one source in all of these platforms, on ChatGPT, on Perplexity, on AI mode, whatever. So we've got to move all of our resources into Reddit. So you're taking like everything you were doing for SEO and you're moving it over there. And then, 2 weeks later, you see Reddit citations are dropping as a percentage. And then you're like, oh, that was a horrible idea. I shouldn't have moved everything to Reddit. And my point here is like, both of those were wrong decisions. Like the first decision to move everything and then the second decision to move everything back, both of those are actually counterproductive and paradoxically slow you down. So it's a fine balance, actually, moving fast and being agile with being judicious and focused. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today.
Well, the notion of moving everything just sounds exhausting. Like, why wouldn't you just test and experiment? Like, I feel like with speed comes agility, and usually it's trying to harness experimentation as a shared habit, not like a one-time thing, right? And I feel like that alleviates this all or nothing mentality of like, okay, we're seeing some trend lines moving in this direction. Data is telling us this. Our audience is telling us this, because let's not forget that should be an input. Let's test it. Let's peel off 10% of our budget or whatever it is and try. And maybe the speed with which we experiment is fast, but it's this like, let's move everything over here and then everything over here. That just sounds exhausting to me.
Mm-hmm. You're getting at the idea of portfolio thinking, right? So you've got a portfolio of bets and actions, and maybe you set aside some percentage of that to innovation and experimentation and R&D. Is that kind of the point here?
Am I hearing the barbell theory?
Possibly a barbell, any sort of risk-adjusted portfolio.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it is interesting seeing how quickly the cycle's happening in our industry. Like, I remember, is it 3 years ago when ChatGPT launched, or like tools like Jasper and stuff came out, and what we were hearing from people is, oh yeah, we're just going to create a lot of content with AI. Like, we're just going to fire our agency, or like expect our agency to do this thing. And then there was hey, AI overviews came up, and that became a big talk track for us with our clients of like, stay calm, do not make any rash decisions. This does not mean that SEO is going to go to shit. Like, let's wait and see a little bit. And it hurts me to say that personally, because like wait and see goes against my principles of also wanting to move fast. But in some cases, just because you get this one data point doesn't mean you change your entire strategy. Like what we're talking about here is like, how do we gather data to figure out if this new thing we think we should do is actually the right thing? Like, we've had clients come in and say like, we're completely changing our strategy. We're not going to work with you anymore. We're going to go full on video. And it's like, but this is working right now. Like, why are you shifting? What's with all the whiplash?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of one client where talking about looking at data too frequently, and they stand out because they told me, hey, these pages are no longer ranking. They used to be on page 1. What's going on here? And when you look at the content, it was essentially keyword stuff. And I was like, how often are you optimizing these pages? And they're like, every week, like we're trying to keep up when we see the rankings change. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Oh, you've essentially like over optimized the hell out of this.
Oh, interesting.
Where, like, it's just keyword stuffing and you've lost your rankings. And they were asking for us to come in and optimize it. And we were like, you got to under optimize it at this point, because you're just using the same keyword like every other word. Jeez. Or something. So that's an example of, hey, we're looking at the natural fluctuations in the rankings so often that we keep reacting to it every single time we like lose 1 or 2 rankings.
I think, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to follow up with what you said about wait and see being kind of like off brand for you. I think it is for all three of us. We're very action oriented, but I don't think when I think about speed and urgency, I don't think about it only in like the notion of making moves. I think sometimes it boils down to like the speed with which we make decisions and the speed with which we like collect data and orient to a new landscape or a new trend change. And it's like when AIO came out, we were on it within the week or, whatever. It was like pretty immediate. When all of this LLM tool stuff came out, like Alex, you were talking to potential partners within the week. So we moved with speed in the sense that we were adapting to these market changes. We were embracing them. They didn't scare us, but we didn't change the whole way that we work right away. Like we didn't action with speed in that sense. And so I think that's where people get confused is they're like, look at all these changes. Now we have to completely orient our strategy differently, change all of our resourcing, change all of our partners. But it can happen in micro ways too, right? Like you can do research with speed or you can have conversations with speed. Like don't wait until next month to start talking to folks that might know about this emerging trend. Start next week. So it's like it can happen in micro ways too. And that's something I've had to teach myself because I don't like to just wait and see. Like that's against kind of our whole brand ethos is like, we don't know everything yet, so we're not going to do anything. And it's like, that might be true, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes. Like we are moving with speed behind the scenes. We're training up our team, talking to experts, like testing tools. So that just reminded me of what you said, because it does feel uncomfortable, but it is sometimes the right call. It's just to wait and see.
Yeah. I hate that mindset of like, we don't know what to do, therefore we don't do anything.
We don't do anything. Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me. That seems like a really good way to lose.
I mean, that's kind of happening right now with this AEO, GEO stuff. And I do talk to clients about this, and I essentially, I don't know if it's a sales tactic, but I'm like, hey, our clients usually fall in one of two buckets. One is we know it's early. We don't want to put 100% of our eggs in this basket, but we need to invest something to figure out how we win in this new search platform. And then there's another bucket that's like, we don't have all the data and we don't know what we're supposed to do. So we're just not going to do anything. We're going to wait for someone else to figure it out. And then we'll be ready to invest. And I think both are valid. It's totally understandable why folks might decide to go down the second path, but it's very rarely an all or nothing. And I think the folks in that latter bucket think it's like we have to invest a lot or invest nothing. And I find that binary thinking occurs very frequently, sometimes subconsciously, where I'd be like, wait, there's a middle ground here. There's a spectrum of investment. It's not shifting all your budget like that.
I think there's something here around the timeline or the time interval required for a visible and valid and possibly even statistically significant, if I dare say the word, output. So on your example, what they're doing, I would say, is rooted in a valid goal, which is to optimize content towards ranking and driving traffic, right? Like that's kind of a valid input to an organic revenue program. But they're misunderstanding the output window by which those results are actually like trustworthy. So I think to understand, hearkening back to my days of running actual randomized controlled trials on websites, you had this extremely fast feedback loop where you could see within a week or two, depending on like the traffic and targeting of your experiment, if something worked, if it didn't work, if it was inconclusive, et cetera, and you could kind of ship, iterate, drop it, whatever. And then there's other areas of life, like let's say building muscle, right? You're not going to go to the gym one day and see any significant output in terms of like anything measurable, but over the course of say 1 to 3 months, you probably could. And that's where you can kind of adjust your tactics and strategy based on that. What that window is for content updates in SEO, I don't necessarily know. I think probably a quarterly basis. I don't know what you guys think there. Probably a little quicker window in AEO. I would assume that there's a little bit more rapid feedback cycle there. But to me, it's like understanding what variables you're dealing with whatever system you're dealing with, because there's going to be something uncontrollable about how fast you can learn and really learn. I mean, I'm not just saying like, like you can kind of feel the burn in a workout, but like, can you see actual like muscle, like from a DEXA scan or something like that?
Yeah, it reminds me of running A/B tests, both on a marketing side, but like even product side, like we have an idea of how many samples can we get in X time period. Great. We need to run this experiment for 2 weeks to get enough samples to make a decision. When it comes to these new channels or like AEO, I mean, I would treat it like our other channels, like SEO. You probably need a quarterly time frame. Paid marketing, couple days, a week, maybe, to see if the campaign's driving anything, depending on how large your audience is. AEO, it makes sense to have set that timeline, and like until you pass that timeline, don't worry about performance. Like give it time to perform and actually get data over a time series before making a call. And I actually haven't had that conversation with a lot of clients. Like they're not asking it, but I'll tell them, hey, we recommend running this strategy for at least 3 months before you start making a decision on whether or not it's working. Like not even just talking about the time to like see results after implementation, but the time it takes to do the implementation, like getting all the brand mention placements, producing the content to fill your gaps and all that. There's like definitely a lag.
There's also something, I'm really trying to make this concrete, but I'm abstracting it again. There's something to the idea of like, are you being fast with like iterative decision making, or are you sort of shifting entirely different directions? How do I frame this? So for, let's like say the fitness context, like you could start with a goal in your head. You have to start with something specific. You can't just say get fit, right? Because that could mean run a triathlon, or run a triathlon, do a triathlon, do a bodybuilding contest, or swim like X like speed or something like that, like or lose body fat, or like there's going to be so many different goals, right? And within, like, once you set one of those, you can kind of test the tactics along the way. But to shift entirely the different strategies or your end goal, like that's, I think, where the thrashing comes in.
Yeah.
So with the example of Ali, you'd said a client shifting all of their, let's say, like classic SEO resources to video. That's a fundamental shift where you have an opportunity cost that you basically can't sequence both of those simultaneously. Like there's a finite pie, and there's going to be a trade-off where you have to take some resources from one and bring them to the other. Whereas, like, let's say your goal, to David's point, is to increase visibility in AI engines. You can still set the parameters for like, all right, we're at 20% now against whatever prompts, like we're at, 5,000 sessions, referral traffic, whatever your kind of metric is. And then I think you can run faster iterations on the tactics that you use to get there, versus the larger shift of saying like, all right, fuck classic search. We're going to go fully into just Reddit or something like that. Like that's a big shift.
I think that's what I was speaking to earlier about like the, I don't know why I'm thinking micro macro in my brain, but like micro urgency or tactical level urgency. Cause like I'm seeing there's like marketing leadership level strategy, right? Which is like the end all be all goal. Some folks come to us knowing what that goal is. Some folks consult with us to determine that goal. Usually that begets channels. And then you have your channel level strategy, and then you have your tactics. And so like tactically quick, like I don't know the timeline, but like maybe within the week, maybe within the month, you can like both experiment with and change tactics. Channel level strategy, like to what David's point, is like 3 months, maybe. I mean, it's going to depend, but like SEO, GEO, more of the organic, like that you can't control every single factor. Like you have to give that time to breathe. The channel decisions themselves, going like, we're going to stop everything with search and do all video. I mean, those aren't channels, but you know what I'm saying? Like high up one more step. Those should probably bake for a little bit longer, right? Like the channel decisions, unless the marketing strategy changes too. But I think when we started this conversation, you were saying the thrashing, we've seen it happen all the way up here at the marketing level strategy of like, oh my gosh, everything's changing. We need to completely go in this direction and then this direction. And like, how are you supposed to gather any kind of helpful data, understand what channels are working, like get any kind of data points if you're changing that level of strategy so quickly? I don't know the time threshold for like that high up of a strategy, but I think that's the difference that you're speaking to, is like tactical and maybe channel level strategy can change relatively quickly, but anything higher up, it needs some time to bake and to get that data back.
To me, it's actually simpler on a heuristic level. Like some of these questions around what to invest in are challenging from like a research decision-making perspective, because they are going to incur trade-offs and opportunity costs. But to me, like the heuristic is, you want to focus on what to focus on. You want to, set aside time to really think about what you want to work on. And that may take time. That may take like months or years, to determine what kind of a company you want to build. Probably is not like a flippant decision. I mean, maybe you could run some quick rapid tests like Tim Ferriss, ads and like, landing page where it's like a wait list or something like that. But like generally speaking, like you want to really be judicious about what you focus on. And then I feel like once you've decided that, that's the point at which a lot of companies are too slow for my liking. Because once you've decided it, it's like you might as well go as fast as fucking possible, right? Like if you've got this goal of organic visibility and revenue, you've got a strategy of, owned content creation. You've got a site with zero content. You see that as a gap. So you want to create content. There's the tactical layer of like creating the content. And you're like, all right, you might as well like do that really fast. You know what I mean? Like there's no sense in me in slowing that down, because what you're doing is you're bottlenecking yourself in terms of learning rate, alpha learning rate and machine learning, right? Like you're basically hamstringing what lessons you're going to learn and your iterative capabilities. But then also there's this Matthew effect or cumulative advantage in which like the earlier you start investing in a compounding channel, the faster and larger it compounds. So by waiting and stringing that out, you're actually harming both the idea that it's going to work at all. Like you're like, if you're going to try this out, you want to learn as fast as possible if it's the right tactic, is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
I wanted to call back to like Ali framed it as like strategy versus tactics. And I think a lot of what we're talking about, or the way I'm perceiving a lot of this, is we're talking about folks who are changing strategies, mm-hmm. or like thinking, or they're changing tactics, thinking that is changing strategy. Because everything that we're talking about here, if we abstract it to the highest level, like the strategy is we want to show up whenever our potential prospects search for these things related to our product or industry. And Google search is one channel or tactic. Reddit is one channel. AI search is one channel, and all the different tactics that fall into those channels are all tactics. And one example I think perfectly illustrates this, I don't remember if we were recording, but like people saying like, oh, Reddit is one of the most cited sites, so therefore we're going to invest in Reddit marketing, which, okay, fair. It's cited by LLMs, but that's probably a good place to invest regardless regardless if it was cited, because people are talking about your brand on Reddit. And then with the Google removing the num parameter 100 thing and Reddit now being cited less, and people deciding based on that one data point that they're not going to invest in Reddit as much. I'm not sure if that's happening a lot, but like I see some of the discussion on LinkedIn. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if your high level strategy is still you want to appear whenever people talk about things related to your brand and like your industry and product, why would this one change mean you should stop investing in Reddit? Because people are going to keep talking about you there, regardless of whether it gets cited in LLMs. And so it's almost like people are mistaking the like channel for like strategy. Like, oh, we have a Reddit strategy, but now we need to stop doing Reddit. Really, it's like a tactic for visibility. So like they're cutting a tactic, it's not a strategy. Like the strategy is still the same thing, but they're mistaking investments.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, the channel is not necessarily Reddit, it's organic. Right. And so like we might maneuver things under that organic umbrella to serve general visibility. Sure, we look at LLMs as one of those ways that visibility manifests. We look at Google. But if you're looking to show up organically online, that one data point change, even if citations dropped by 20%, doesn't necessarily make Reddit not valuable anymore.
Well, you're making a heuristic-based decision. It's like if vegetables came out that they made your eyesight better, like everybody starts eating vegetables, and then it turns out that study was bunk. It's still valuable to eat vegetables for a myriad of other reasons, right?
Yeah.
So
yes,
that comes the decision-making side. I think we've kind of bolted together. I'm curious about we work with a lot of clients, and we've all had in-house experiences. I've worked at early stage companies that I think are incredibly fast-paced. Pep to me is like a very fast-moving person. LawnStarter was the same way. I think HubSpot, we all had different experiences and maybe even throughout our journeys there. So we've all had these in-house experiences. We've seen leaders move fast. We've seen leaders move slow. We've worked with companies, ground up, startups, Series A, et cetera, who've moved fast and slow and thrashed and not. Large companies who move fast, large companies who move slow. We've seen a lot of this shit. So I'm curious, like now if we can go into what makes, like once you've decided on what to do, what makes teams flow effortlessly and what makes teams kind of bottlenecked and weighed down and red taped and just unable to do anything. That's what I want to get into.
What did you feel, or what do you feel? What comes to mind when you think of Pep moving fast? Like, what are some examples?
Extremely fast decision making. He doesn't wait around and midwit things. He's also, so I think this is actually a supremely important quality in a person. This is something that Mark Lindquist talked about years ago. I don't know if you guys remember this, but he learned it from Sujin Patel. Basically, don't be the bottleneck. So oftentimes there's this like, there's like a time it takes to do a task, but then there's the time it takes to wait on somebody else to do the task they need to do before you get to your task. And that time period of waiting is wasted time. And it's also demoralizing because you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs trying to figure out what else to do. So now, as we all have direct reports, like one of my main management principles, probably number one, like is basically don't bottleneck them. So if they're waiting on me for an approval, if that's a 2-second email where I just say yes or no, and I wait a day to do that, I've killed a day of their time and their morale. So I think with Pep, he was always just fast to say, yes, that looks good. No, that looks bad. Like, let's fix that. Like, da-da-da-da-da. He got things moving. Like there was no, oh, we'll get to it next week. No, there's no next week. Today I'll get to it. Right. If that allows you to get on your journey, then I'm going to make the time to help you get on your journey faster. So I think that's a cultural thing and an individual thing, but don't be the bottleneck is huge for me. Yeah.
I think what is lying under that for me is ruthless prioritization and like very, very good time management. So like making sure you manage your time really well so you have the space to review something that might be a 30-second email, but maybe you need to spend 20 minutes taking a look at it. And there's also ruthless prioritization in terms of like, do I really need to be spending my time on this? Or is this what's causing me maybe to be a bottleneck on these types of projects or these types of decisions? So I think those are also cultural things that need to be baked in and taught like at the individual level. Because I think a lot of leaders, like Pep is an incredible leader. He's obviously mastered those things, but I don't know if a lot of like ICs or tactical teams are really taught those kind of skills that then allow them to not be the bottleneck. Like maybe they're overthinking a decision, or they're like, I should probably spend a little bit more time thinking about this, but I don't have time until tomorrow or next week. Or like, then you start to justify delays thinking that's making you do a better job or making better decisions, but it's probably not. It's just, you either haven't done enough reps or you haven't really been taught up on how to move fast. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, well, there's the flip side that you're hitting on, which is like you don't need to be the bottleneck in all of those situations, which is also under the bucket of don't be the bottleneck. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to review and approve and give feedback on everything. In fact, a large portion of those decisions you start to decentralize and actually allocate to the person who's asking you. Like if somebody comes to you and asks like, hey, can you review this email or this essay? It's like, all right, like if we've worked together for a year, I trust you. And if you fuck up, like that's on you. You got to take ownership of that.
Yeah.
And then if there's an expensive decision that's complex and they've never faced before, like that's maybe a time that you do allocate some of your time to give a review.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be like, not everything should be running through you at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. So delegation and trust too, kind of on the other side of it.
I think where my mind goes is a slightly different direction where like it's similar to what you said, Alex, like quick decision making. For me, it's the idea of laying out the tracks. And that's like making sure anyone who would be impacted or would be involved has buy-in and is aware and that it's all communicated. So I can think of examples like in previous roles where maybe from director level down, which I was a part of, like alignment. But when you go VP and up, they have no clue what's happening. So when you go to another department trying to do this thing and that department also doesn't have context, they're like, makes sense, but I don't get what's happening. So I have to hit pause. Like I need to understand this whole thing first. That's a bottleneck, but they're like trying to also watch out so you don't do something that messes up their team. that's what happened to me a lot. And then as I became more experienced, when I caught that, what I realized was I had to be the one doing the roadshow to get the buy-in and get everyone aligned before moving forward. I think in an ideal scenario, like a really good manager director, like they communicate up the chain, and then like the conversation happens at a higher level so that if you go to another department, you're not blocked. But I remember when this happened, like I had a really good manager at HubSpot, and he laid out the groundwork for me like so much. Not only did he tell me who to go talk to, he was like, I will also have conversations at the VP level to unblock you there if you can do the unblocking at your level. And so we did all that, and then got buy-in, got budget, and all that. And it all happened so smoothly. And looking back, I'm like, oh, that was a perfect example of how this works. And I see it with some of our clients, right? Like we'll work with maybe a content or SEO manager, but their VP isn't involved in the process. And so like they're blocked on a bunch of things. And we're like, well, how do we get this unblocked? But we don't have line to leadership, folks who are actually making decisions that are blocking them because they don't have the context, or maybe the person we're working with is not communicating the context accurately or something. So it's just whatever it means to like lay down the tracks and like make sure everyone's in a know and is bought in. It's like make sure that happens so that they're not accidentally bottlenecking you because they're like unaware of what's happening.
I'm laughing because there's a Japanese word for this.
No.
As there usually is. It's nemawashi. It's a Japanese practice of informally consulting with stakeholders to build consensus, gather support for an idea proposal before formal decision making. The literal translation means preparing the ground.
Wow.
It's always spot on. I actually...
Like, and I think...
Yeah, go ahead.
Like the scenario I'm talking about is like big company. Like if it was you and Pepe at CXL, it was like, I don't think there was much bureaucracy, right?
No. So actually, I'll trace it back. There's a broader concept here. So I do think it's more important in big companies with literal like stakeholder alignment. But one thing I've been thinking about is speed, because I use a lot of metaphors and analogous thinking. It's just the way my brain works. But I've learned a lot of skills like tennis and golf and jiu-jitsu and like a bunch of I'm an enthusiast. And one thing that I learned about tennis specifically is that like I was holding the racket wrong for many years. And then I had to do lessons and I had to basically relearn how to hold the racket and how to swing. And that slowed me down for a significant time period, like where I was worse than I started. But then eventually, like once I did it the right way, I was accelerating at a faster pace. So I think there's something to the idea of kind of learning the best practices, and let's call it quality calibration. And I can directly relate this to editorial and SEO generally, probably, but editorial specifically. So like if we have engagements where we kind of get around to editorial, actually, this kind of relates to the hit the ground fast too. But if we wait until 6 weeks or 8 weeks to, send somebody the first draft for a piece that they see, we miss the mark. It's a long time period where we didn't learn what good looks like. If you learn what good looks like on day 1, on day 14, whatever that is, with whatever artifacts that already exist, maybe there's documentation. But the best case scenario is you put something forward and you get feedback and actually see how that resonates with the client, with the market. You can calibrate that quality. And then once you know what good looks like, you can go very, very fast and just keep doing that over and over again. So with tennis, with jiu-jitsu, with whatever you're doing, like once you know how to execute a move or swing a racket or swing a club, then you can just practice swinging that club day in, day out. You could do your 996 or whatever it is. And you can put the reps in that matter, and then you're going to improve at a faster rate. So I know it's not the same thing as aligning stakeholders, but there is this sort of like prepping the ground, the mise en place, like getting the pieces in order and making sure that you've got the right technique first.
Well, you're essentially speaking to progress over perfection.
Yeah.
Like not waiting for like a perfect output. You start making moves and like delivering things and getting feedback and then iterating and moving forward. And over time, you've covered more ground faster than you would have had you held on to something for longer, trying to make it perfect before you delivered or did it or whatever.
Yeah. Yes and no, right? Like it's sort of an interesting balancing act. I think yes, in the sense that you want to, I think like shipping something really early is important in almost everything you do. Until you write an article or an essay that, somebody else reads, like you don't actually know if it's good. Like you might think it's good. And maybe you're just doing it for your own personal pleasure in your journal. Like that's fine too. But if you care about market reaction and like some sense of an external goal or an extrinsic goal, you want to get it out as fast as possible, because then you can get the feedback that you can then incorporate into your further drafts. This is a concept Jeffrey Miller had some quote. Let me actually pull this up because it's so fascinating to me. This actually guided a lot of my philosophy on experimentation, and maybe we'll touch on this. But I love the idea of kind of lowering the cost of shipping. This is like a really long quote that I had somewhere in this. I'm writing a draft on this. Oh yeah, so Jeffrey Miller, who's like an evolutionary psychologist, wrote The Mating Mind, and there's a section in his book where he's like, Simonton's data shows that excellent composers do not produce a higher proportion of excellent music than good composers. So, Ali, to your point on perfection, right? They simply produce a higher total number of works. People who achieve extreme success in any creative field are almost always extremely prolific. What's this say? Those who write only 10 papers are much less likely to strike gold with any of them. With Picasso, if you paint 14,000 paintings in your lifetime, some of them are likely to be pretty good, even if most are mediocre. So there's this idea that just the rate of shipping is great. And I think like the faster you can do that, the faster you can understand if you're on track and if you're not, kind of where you're at. It's like there's a lot of people who will just watch YouTube videos of people doing jiu-jitsu or like tutorials and stuff. But like ultimately you have to kind of get out there and just see, oh, does this arm bar actually work? And it probably won't.
Yeah, I find we toe that line with clients a bit. And I think I toe it myself personally too, where there's the setting up the mise en place, laying out the tracks, but knowing when to be like, I've done enough of the setup. I'm going to ride the tracks now versus, like sometimes there's an aspect of you're doing the meta work and it feels like you're doing the work, but you're not actually doing something. Like, hey, I'm doing all the research for an SEO strategy, and I'm figuring out the right keywords. I'm figuring out the strategy and like how much content to produce every month and all the people that need to be bought in. And it's been 3 months and you work on the strategy, but you haven't produced anything. That's like what's going on. Like setting that window of how much time will I spend prepping? How much prep do I actually need? And if I use the tracks analogy, like, do I need to set the railroad tracks for the entire journey? Or can I set like the first mile and then start riding it and then like be building the tracks as I go? It's still letting me go quickly. I'm not bottlenecking myself, but I think what folks hear when I say things like slow, like what is it? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Mm-hmm. People get really anchored on slow. It's like, it doesn't mean I'm going to move super slow. It's just like, let's just make sure we're about to do stuff that's in our favor than potentially like stumble over ourselves.
Well, you're hitting on an idea I've been really obsessing over from an operational standpoint, which is like, let's call it parallel pathing. So there's some things that you cannot do at the same time, but there's a lot you can do at the same time and they actually won't conflict with each other. So in the SEO context, you can imagine you do a lot of prep work during sales calls. You kind of understand like where the gaps are. Like sometimes people will come and be like, hey, our homepage is no indexed, right? And you're like, all right, well, okay, we're going to do like a whole like growth roadmap, right? We're going to do all the setup. We're going to figure out how to get you 50% year over year growth in organic revenue. However, we're going to fix the no index. Like we're just going to do that on day one. And I think simultaneously, you could also run some editorial experiments, some pages that obviously need to exist. Could you fast track link building if there's some pages that obviously need it, before you do the entire strategy? So I've often started to look at like, how can I, resources in mind, like obviously you need to have the resources that are available for it. How can you do one thing that takes a longer time and you want to complete that and you want to deliberately complete that? So you're actually like, this kind of goes back to our decision making on like what to focus on, right? You don't want to rush that, but can you do some stuff while you're focusing on that? Like I think you probably can in many cases. Yeah, like you're taking a master's in fine writing and you're waiting until your degree is like shipped to your place or whatever, and like you could probably just like write a blog post in the meantime. Like you don't have to complete the degree to write the first essay.
Yeah, I think that can be applied to a lot of things. Like instead of, I don't know if it's the right, is this sequential?
Sequential, one after the other. Yeah.
Or like waterfall. Yeah. Instead of like parallel processing. And especially with like AI nowadays, if there's something that you think is going to take a long time to think about and you have all these other things you have to do really quickly, what I've started doing recently is I just have a ChatGPT deep research thing running in the back end. Like I have to spend some time thinking about this. Let me just put all my raw thoughts down, start this deep research thing, and then I have all these other tactical things that I'll do in 30 minutes. And then when I need to go do the actual thinking on that thing, I have a much better starting point than if I were to just wait and do this.
I like that idea too, of like kind of queuing up, like this is the idea of the rocks, the pebbles and the sand or something like that, where it's like you put the rocks in first, because if you put the sand in first, the rocks won't fit. So you think about what your big things are and like you really focus on those as the core objectives. But you have a bunch of sand tasks as well that can fill in the time when you're like, hurry up and wait, so to speak. So like Kate with original research, there's always a component where you're collecting data, whether that's from survey respondents or like however you're doing the data collection. There's going to be like a couple days, or a couple weeks between. And even like, when you send it off to design, like you're going to have a couple days between before you get like the first draft back. So like instead of just waiting, could you queue up another survey methodology? Could you queue up the copy or the repurposing of the distribution plan for it? Like, can you sequence things like while you're waiting on a task in the background? That's something that feels like very low hanging fruit to me on like a personal productivity level. Like, I don't even know if that's necessarily, you should try to train that from a company and culture level, but that seems very much like that's how I've been productive in my career.
Yeah, if we go back to the placing bets and organic strategy and all that, what I tell people is, hey, if you don't already have a marketing program set up, yes, SEO, like you seem to have conviction, gonna take a couple months to ramp it up. You should be doing paid and like iterating there and getting faster feedback cycles, which then actually informs SEO and AI optimization and all that as well. So I definitely think it applies beyond just like individual, but maybe it takes a little bit more coordination for that to happen at a department level.
Mm-hmm. I think there's something, what do you guys think about this too? I think there's something cultural like that kind of imbues through usually like the leadership team or the founders, where like you can cast ripple effects with small decisions. And like this is something that Pep taught me too, is like you set a bar for excellence, like whether it's like, quality of a website page or design or your products or how you do things in an organization. And like, once you set that, if you don't enforce that, it's actually not a rule. It's just like kind of bullshit. So it's like, if you say you're a fast company and then, David, you've done this a few times, which I really appreciate. It's like somebody comes and you ask like, hey, when is this like going to get done? Or like, when can we review this? And they say like, hey, Q3. You're like, well, it's Q1. Like, it's a long time until Q3. Maybe you don't have the full thing completed, but like, can you show me something next week? Like, what is preventing you from like actually having something like to discuss in like 2 days or like 2 weeks or whatever, like the viable time frame is. Like, I know that's a big, and this guy is obviously controversial now, but like, I know that's a huge component of Elon Musk's management methodology is he'll take like a 6-year time frame that most people deem as feasible. And he'll be like, how can we do it in 6 months? And then you kind of get creative on it and you're like, oh, actually, we didn't really need this part. This was just sort of pre-planning. This was just sort of like documentation. We could do the documentation later. So actually, like, we won't be able to do like 100% precision detail by this date, but we actually can get most of the way there. So, but I think as leaders, you have to enforce that, because like that's Frank Slootman's idea. It's like, if you don't do it, no one's going to fucking do it.
Yeah, it's like enforcement and leading by example. Like, wait, if David says we should be going fast, but he's bottlenecking us, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I'm very cognizant when I do that too. I'm just like, I think I'm holding Alex back on his contract. Yep, just send it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think,
or I think I'm holding Allie back.
that's where I take like best practice with a grain of salt. Like, I think you mentioned earlier in this conversation, Alex, like something about learning best practice. I don't remember exactly, but I remember the words were used. And I think people tend to get so married to this is how you do this thing based on blogs or this thought leader or this person, this influencer on LinkedIn or whoever said like, this is how you do it, or this is how long it's going to take to do it. And it's like, train up on that, but learn the rules to break them. Like, question everything and look at everything through the lens of like your business, your audience, your product, whatever. and remove all these expectations of like, this company did this in 12 months, or I don't even have an example for this, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about, where you have these like industry standards or industry averages or these expectations that are set by folks who've come before you. And that doesn't have to apply to you. Like if you're small, if you're agile, even if you're a big team and you want to change your culture and move faster, and it starts at the leadership level, like question everything, see what kind of like, junk you can toss, and then just like try to move faster. So, I mean, I always take best practice with a grain of salt. I don't think it has to be the case.
Yeah. You're speaking to my heart on that one. That's very much like best practices are usually common practices. I think Justin Rondo said that. So shouts out Justin Rondo. But common practices are often mediocre practices or like median practices. And like, if you are cool just being like one of many and like kind of fitting in that median, that's cool. But like, I don't know. I'm kind of going against my earlier point here, but I was just imagining like Hendrix, like, is he sitting down with a guitar teacher learning the proper form? And obviously he wasn't. And if he did, would he have been Hendrix? So there is some level of punk rockedness where it's like, if you do just think for yourself, like, I'm not sure it works out all the time. I'm sure there's survivor bias going here. But in a lot of cases, it ends up much better than if you'd followed the routinized path.
Yeah, like this isn't like subject to a client, but we're hiring a number of roles right now. And there's a role that's been open. And I think when we first teed it up, we kind of followed best practice, did a lot of research on what other people were doing. I know I talked to ChatGPT for a while just to give it some shape. And now like we're going to the second iteration and I'm like, I'm going to question everything. That's a part of this like JD, a part of this application process, a part of, the whole thing. And I'm also going to add like our twist to it. Like, even if these 4 teams don't have this on their JD, that doesn't mean it's wrong. Like, I think it's right for us. I think it's right for our clients, and I'm going to our clients, I'm going to our team, and I'm just like redoing it through my lens. And so it's like, I learn the rules to then break them, to know what works best for us and the team that we're building. That's a very specific example, but I definitely think it's applicable for SEO, GEO, all of the things. And like you said, Alex, like best practice is common practice. Like if you're just following what everyone else is doing, you're probably not going to win. Yeah. So
one thing that makes me think about here too is, I'm going to bring up the midwit curve again. How do I express this idea? There's like, I tell myself, I go straight to the endpoint. I go straight to the source. I go straight to the essence. Like, I don't have a phrase yet that I think is musical yet on this, but I think a lot of times like we'll kind of architect all these systems and processes around something when you could just metaphorically pick up the phone and call the person. You know what I mean? Like, there's this kind of societal thing going on with like over therapization, and like people will read books and talk about attachment styles and like childhood wounds and like all this stuff. And it's like, but all you're like, in many cases that's valuable, but in a lot of cases, like what these people are doing is just procrastinating when they should just go have a conversation with the person who they're in a relationship with. So I'll think about that sometimes as sales. I'm like, okay, obviously, like as you scale the business, like it's important to have systems that you can then train and repeat. But sometimes if you want to renew a contract, like you just got to like text the person whose like job it is to say yes to you. Or like, I don't know, we'll have sometimes there's like feedback and like challenging relationships with clients. And we'll on our side, like architect all these really complex solutions. And I don't know, maybe this is a founder thing. Maybe it's like hard to do this, like, when you're working kind of in the weeds here, but it's like that concept of the Gordian knot. And, you got to come in with a sword and just kind of cut it and just like, all right, like, can I just go to the client, have a 25-minute conversation and just like untangle this mess and just go to the source? I think about that a lot. Like how often we waste time and effort procrastinating on things that aren't actually the solution, but are kind of around the solution when you could just go right to it.
Yeah, just call it what it is. It's refreshing having those chats. It's like you're both thinking the same thing. Just say it.
Yeah, I love those now. Anything else on speed? I have a lot of notes on this. This is like something I'm writing about. I have a whole essay I could just link to on the lowering the cost or risk associated with actions, experiments, and decisions.
No, I think like even just beyond marketing, I think it goes back to what you were saying, Alex, around like the Elon Musk thing. I think we can do a lot more faster than we think we can. And I personally had to challenge myself with this too, like similar to what you're doing, Ali, with that role. Like for hiring, I had to hire a recruiting coordinator. I thought that's what I needed. I put up a job description. I'm like, nope, this is not what I needed. Let me iterate on this. I didn't even have an interview process. I just started talking to people. And with each interview, I was like, okay, these are the questions I'm going to ask. This is what I want Alex and Ali to ask. This is what like the project is going to be, just as I went. And over, it was a little painful in the sense that I spoke to people and then later had to tell them the rules changed and we're looking for something different. So yeah, it was painful. I think I did it in a way that was thoughtful and, you know, not just a generic email. And I was transparent that it changed. But if I had spent all that time trying to perfect the right JD and all that, that would not have worked out. Like I would have started interviewing and be like, I just wasted all that time trying to write this perfect JD. And it was based on what I saw. It was based on other people's job descriptions. So I kind of used that benchmark and then later realized that that's not what I wanted. And I always go back to this idea where challenging what people commonly say, where like, for example, whenever I eat at a restaurant, I do the thing where I count how many tables there are, how many people there are, what the average receipt might be, how much revenue they might be making. And then I think about like, wait, they're making like not that much revenue if this is like the cost of their dishes and all that. And then I would go on Reddit and be like, oh yeah, everyone says that restaurants are bad margins. Like restaurants are horrible businesses. And I'm like, is that because most restaurant owners are bad business owners? Like, I'm pretty sure that's it. A lot of people just open restaurants because they're excited about having a restaurant or something. And then I was listening to a podcast with Will Guidara, who wrote the Unreasonable Hospitality. He was like, oh yeah, I know everyone says restaurants are bad businesses, but I mean, we were a really good business. Like we were running, we knew our books, we had our P&L, like we were managing all our costs. So it just goes back to, don't just accept what people say is like the thing to do, whether it's marketing or hiring for a role. Just, I'm always skeptical of how people get to best practices in general. And it's always such a hard discussion to have whenever, whether it's a client or a boss is like, well, what's a benchmark we should hold ourselves to? Like, what's HubSpot's benchmark? Maybe we should aim for that. And I'm like, what?
How many best practice articles I wrote as a 24-year-old on the HubSpot blog? There are people doing things that I wrote.
Thanks, Allie.
I mean, I think I'm pretty smart and I did my research, but like, come on, like, don't take that stuff as gospel. Use it as a starting point, iterate, know your audience, and then iterate.
Yeah. And so, also like the Reddit citations in GPT, like I've seen tweets about this. It's like, you guys know you're taking life advice from like a random Redditor from like 7 years ago, right?
Yes. Yeah. All of them are like closed threads.
Well, not even just that, but like, okay, like on a personal thing, me and Lisa are planning out our wedding and Lisa's Chinese. And she's like, I got to ask my mom about like what lucky days or months to get married. Cause it's like a Chinese thing. I'm like, I don't know. Okay, sure. And she's like, wait, let me ask ChatGPT. She's like, hey, based on a Chinese calendar zodiac thing, like Dave is a year of the sheep and I'm a year of the pig. Like, what's a good date to get married? And she puts it all in. She gets to like these different dates. And I was like, what are the citations there? And it's like these random ass websites getting cited. And I'm like, I can't believe you're just trusting this blindly. And it just makes me think of people just blindly trusting, like, without looking at the sources or anything.
That's amazing.
It's like, oh, I guess ChatGPT is like deciding our wedding date based on whatever
dude
it thinks is.
Did it give you like a Tuesday or something?
It gave me very specific dates, like May 25th or 26th or something.
I feel like
funny.
This could be a whole separate chat, like on these predictions around like LLMs making decisions on behalf of LLMs and like using that data as like their decision criteria. And
oh yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure it's going to get to some sense of that future, but like, I don't know, maybe I'm a boomer in mindset or like curmudgeonly, but I'm like, I actually kind of want to make the decisions for myself in many of these cases because of stuff like that. I'm like what data is this using? Yeah.
But we have like an intimate knowledge of how the internet works. And like, a lot of people don't. Like people are, and that's a lot of conversations I'm having with prospects is like visibility is just one half of the coin. Sentiment, I think, is the other that we'll probably do more and more work on because folks take this stuff as gospel, or they at least take it as like, they take it as a short list. And if something is framed in like a neutral or a negative way, it falls off the list. And then they're going to go toward the top 3 because there's so much noise out there. I mean, especially consumers making buying decisions. Like we can make a lot of assumptions on this, but I've been having more and more chats on this. So it's a weird time.
Fun future.
Did you see the meme, or like not a meme, but the video of like when you use ChatGPT for everything?
Oh, I think I did. I saw I didn't watch the full thing. I saw the start of the clip when he's at the bodega or whatever. And he's like,
he walks, like a hardware store or something.
He's like, what should I say? Like, he said, how's it going?
How's your day? It's like,
the voice, like the voice version. My friend uses that every single day. She's like, let me ask chat. I'm like, I'm freaked out. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. Just like human-esque voice talking back at her. Oof.
Well, we started with speed and we finished on think for yourself. So that was a good philosophical rabbit hole.